7 years. And not a single child. That was the accusation Marcus hurled at Leona. In front of family, in front of neighbors, he stripped her of dignity. She walked out that night with nothing but a small handbag. Everyone whispered, "She is barren." But the truth was far more dangerous. The hall was dressed like a kingdom. Chandeliers dangled from the ceiling like frozen fireworks. Gold chairs lined the aisles, violins rehearsed a song no one would remember. At the center of this spectacle stood Marcus Grant, the man of the hour, the groom, the businessman who once believed that respect could be bought with tailored suits and imported champagne. He tugged his sleeve, straightened his cufflinks, and smirked, as if the whole building was built just to reflect his shine. But deep inside, Marcus was waiting for something more than his bride. He was waiting for a ghost, because at the top of the guest list, written in his own hand, was a name he never expected to see again: Leona Carter, his ex-wife, the woman he had thrown out 7 years earlier with words so sharp they still cut the air. Why invite her? Simple: pride. Marcus wanted her to sit in the first row, dressed in sorrow, broken by memory. He wanted her to watch as he married Vanessa Cole, a younger, flashier socialite whose gown cost more than most people's homes. To Marcus, this was not just a wedding, it was a performance. Declaration that he had moved on and upgraded. What he didn't know was that his stage was about to collapse under the weight of truth. Because while Marcus rehearsed his victory lap, a black Rolls-Royce was already gliding through the streets of the city. Its chrome wheels reflected neon lights, its body sleek as midnight. Inside, Leona sat calm. She wore a golden gown that shimmered without apology, and she wasn't alone. 3 little boys, identical in their matching white shirts and bow ties, fidgeted in their seats beside her. Triplets, her sons. The same woman Marcus once branded as barren now carried living proof that he had been wrong all along. As the car slowed near the venue, the driver glanced at Leona in the rearview mirror. Her face was calm, but her eyes carried a quiet fire. She leaned forward, whispering, "We walk in together. No tears, no fear, just truth." The boys nodded, holding her hands tightly. Outside, the crowd buzzed, unaware that history was about to walk past them. This is where the story begins, with an invitation meant for humiliation. That turned into a coronation. Over the next hour, you'll discover how a man's arrogance can burn down everything he builds, how a woman dismissed as worthless can rise with dignity, and how truth, no matter how long buried, always finds a way to the surface. So ask yourself, what happens when pride throws a wedding, but truth shows up uninvited? Stay with me, because the answer will not only shock you, it might just change the way you see power, the way you see justice, and the way you see redemption. And if stories of justice and resilience speak to you, take a moment right now to subscribe to Black Voices Justice, because here, every story carries a truth the world needs to hear. The Rolls-Royce slowed at the curb, its black paint catching every flash of light. Heads turned, phones lifted. But no one inside the glittering hall knew yet what was coming. Marcus checked his watch for the 10th time. Vanessa's bridesmaids were lining up, ready to begin their grand entrance. He should have been focused on them, on her, but his mind kept circling. Back to one empty seat in the front row, reserved printed, with a name he had written himself, Leona Carter. Would she come? Would she dare? Marcus pictured her arriving alone, maybe in some faded dress, looking weary from life outside his orbit. The thought made him smile. Perfect, he muttered. Everyone will see the difference. He didn't know that outside. 3 little hands were already clutching their mother's fingers. Leona stepped out of the car like dawn breaking after a storm. Her gown moved with quiet strength, the gold fabric catching light but never screaming for attention. Her sons followed, bow ties slightly crooked, faces wide with curiosity. For a moment, the sidewalk froze. Guests who had stepped out for air dropped their conversations mid-sentence. A waiter carrying a tray of champagne nearly stumbled. Whispers spread like sparks. "Is that her? Marcus's ex? Those are her kids?" Leona didn't look left or right. She walked steady, the triplets at her side. Each step was a soft thunderclap. Each breath was a reminder. She was not broken, and deep inside, she was speaking to herself. "I don't need to prove anything. I don't need revenge. I just need the truth to walk in with me." The boys tugged her hands. "Mom, are we late?" one whispered. Leona smiled. "No, baby. We are right on time." Back inside, Marcus laughed too loudly at something his best man said. It was a nervous laugh, the kind that cracks when silence gets too heavy. The violins began their opening note. The guests stood. The ceremony was seconds away, and then the doors creaked open. The golden gown, the three small boys, the calm face that refused to bow. The entire hall gasped at once. Phones lifted higher. Even the chandeliers seemed to shine a little harder, as if trying to spotlight. The truth walking in. Marcus's smirk vanished, his jaw clenched. The ghost had arrived, and she hadn't come alone. This was not the scene Marcus had scripted, not the humiliation he had planned. Instead, it was the undoing of every lie he had ever told. Because right there, in front of hundreds of eyes, the story flipped. The woman he had discarded was no longer a shadow, she was a revelation. And that's where our first chapter pauses. A wedding meant to glorify one man, now trembling under the footsteps of a woman he thought would never rise again. But here's the question I'll leave you with before we move forward. When you see someone you once crushed walk back into the room stronger than ever, do you clap or do you choke? 7 years earlier, there was no Rolls-Royce, no golden gown, no triplets, only silence. Marcus Grant lived in a mansion that sparkled from the outside but echoed hollow on the inside. Behind the gates, the lights, the cars, lay a marriage that had been dying one unanswered prayer at a time. Leona Carter had been his wife. Gentle, faithful, patient beyond reason. She had stood by him when his business was still a gamble, when the bank called more often than his friends. She believed in him. Not his bank account, but belief cannot silence whispers, and whispers became Marcus's torment. Month after month, Leona waited for news that never came. No child, no heir. No proof of manhood, as Marcus's mother liked to call it. 7 years, 7 cycles of hope turned into despair. 7 anniversaries where her smile never reached her eyes. One night, the silence broke. The house was still, the marble floor cold under Marcus's shoes. He loosened his tie, slammed his keys onto the dresser, and turned toward the woman waiting on the bed. 7 years. "Leona," he snapped, 7 years, and nothing. Her hands shook, her voice trembled. "I've tried, Marcus. We've both tried. Maybe we see another doctor. Maybe there's still hope." "Hope?" His laugh was bitter. "My friends laugh at me every day. My own mother mocks me. Do you know what it means to be called a man without a son? You've made me a fool." Tears blurred her vision. "I am your wife. We vowed before God, for better, for worse." Marcus's voice rose like a storm. "What is a wife who can't give me a child? You eat my food, you wear my clothes, you ride in my cars, but you give me nothing. You are a curse in my life." The word hit her chest like a hammer. Curse. She dropped to her knees, clutching his trousers. "Don't call me that. I've prayed. I've begged God every night. I'm in pain too. Don't throw me away like trash." But Marcus's heart was granite. "I'm done. Tomorrow I'll speak to my lawyer. This marriage is finished." That night, the walls of the mansion heard everything. The maids whispered, but never dared to enter. Leona packed her clothes into a single bag, every dress folded with trembling hands, every memory cut open as if stitched with glass. When she walked out the door, her slippers dragging across the marble, Marcus did not stop her. Not once. Not ever. The air outside was colder than the night sky. She whispered to herself, voice breaking but steady, "I may leave with nothing, but I will not remain broken. My God will fight for me." And with that, she disappeared into the dark. No Rolls-Royce, no children, just a small bag, swollen eyes, and a vow whispered into the night. This is where the fall began. Not with business, not with money, but with a single choice. A man who traded love for pride. And it leaves us with a question before we continue. When you strip someone of dignity thinking they will vanish, what if the very act of breaking them becomes the soil for their rebirth? Leona did not know where her feet were carrying her. The city lights blurred through tears, shops closed their shutters, street dogs curled to sleep, and women packed away baskets of fruit. But Leona kept walking, one hand clutching her small bag, the other wiping tears that refused to stop. She could still hear his voice echoing in her ears. "You are a curse. You are nothing." Those words cut deeper than the cold night wind. They followed her past every street lamp, past every silent stranger, past every prayer she whispered under her breath. Finally, one name came to her mind, Mira, her friend since university, the one person who had always said, "If you fall, my door's open." At nearly 10 o'clock, Leona knocked on Mira's door. Her hands shook, her heart pounded. Mira opened in her night wrapper, eyes wide. "Leona? What happened? Did someone die?" Leona collapsed into her arms. He threw me out." "Said I'm a curse," Mira hissed sharply. "That man has no fear of God, after everything you gave him. He should be ashamed." Leona's tears soaked her shoulder. "I left with nothing. Just this bag. Everything else. It's still there." Mira pulled her inside. "Forget the bag. This is your house now. You will sleep here. You will eat. You will breathe. He lost you, but I will not." That night, Leona lay on a borrowed bed. The sheets smelled of soap and lavender, but her pillow smelled of grief. She replayed Marcus's words again and again. She wondered how love had turned into mockery. She wondered if she had wasted 7 years of her life on a man who only saw her womb and not her soul. By morning, her pillow was soaked with tears. Days passed. Leona sat near the window, silent, staring at the street. Mira tried to cheer her up with jokes, with market trips, with food. But Leona's smile never stayed. "Come with me to the market," Mira urged one morning. "Fresh air will do you good." "I don't want people to see me," Leona whispered. "What if they ask about Marcus?" "What will I say?" "You'll say the truth," Mira snapped, "that a fool threw away a diamond because he wanted a stone." Leona gave a tiny smile, but it faded quickly. One evening, Mira leaned close. "Leona, have you ever had a proper medical checkup?" Leona blinked. "What do you mean?" "A fertility test. To know for sure." "Has any doctor actually told you that you are the problem?" Leona shook her head slowly. "Marcus said it was me. He never agreed to get tested himself. He said he was fine. I had no choice." Mira slammed her hand on the table. "No, enough. Tomorrow we go to the hospital. I want you to hear the truth from a doctor, not from a man drunk on his own pride." Leona hesitated. Her heart raced, but she nodded. She was tired of believing lies. She needed to know. The next day, they walked into Life Hope Medical Center, a quiet clinic, white walls humming with the smell of disinfectant. Dr. Samuel Uche, a soft-spoken physician, welcomed them with kind eyes. "How can I help you, madam?" he asked. Mira answered quickly. She was married for 7 years. No child. Her husband divorced her, calling her barren. But she has never been tested. "We want a full checkup." The doctor nodded. "You did the right thing. Let's begin. Blood work, scans, hormone tests." Leona felt her nerves twist with every needle. Every machine, every form she signed. 2 days later, she sat trembling in front of Dr. Uche's desk, her palms sweaty, her heart pounding. The doctor adjusted his glasses, smiled gently, and said, "Madam, everything looks good. Perfectly normal. Your reproductive system is healthy. You are not the problem," Leona froze. "Nothing? Nothing wrong with me?" "Nothing," the doctor repeated. "If there was no pregnancy in those years, I advise your ex-husband to test himself. You are absolutely fine." Her mouth dropped open. Tears filled her eyes. Mira jumped to her feet. "I knew it. That man lied to you. He blamed you just to cover his own shame," Leona whispered through sobs. "All this time, I wasn't the problem. And that revelation changes everything, because once you know the truth, the chains of a lie can never hold you again." So here's the question before we continue. If the truth proves you innocent, do you quietly heal, or do you prepare to show the world what really broke you? Leona stepped out of the hospital clutching the test results like a fragile treasure. For years, she had begged God to remove a curse. But now she realized the curse had never been hers. She sat on a bench outside the clinic, the midday sun warming her face. Her whole body shook as the truth settled in. "I hated myself, and I wasn't the problem," she whispered. Mira sat beside her, gripping her hand. "Listen to me, Leona. He will pay for what he did to you. One day Marcus will look at you and wish he had never let you go." Leona stared at the sky, tears sliding silently. "Maybe this is the beginning of my healing," she said softly. The next few weeks were different. Leona began to help Mira with her tailoring business. At first, she only swept floors and folded fabrics, but soon she was cutting patterns, measuring clients, even laughing a little when Mira cracked her jokes. It wasn't a miracle transformation. Grief still lived in her chest like a stubborn tenant. Some mornings, she sat at the window again, remembering the marble floor she had crawled on, remembering the word curse. But healing had begun its slow work. One evening, as they closed the shop, Leona spoke. "I've always loved cooking. Maybe I could start something small. A food stand, perhaps?" Mira's eyes lit up. "Yes, that's the spirit. You have hands that can turn plain rice into a feast. Let's make it happen." They pooled their savings. They borrowed a small wooden table. They bought pots, spoons, and a charcoal stove. Within a week, Leona's kitchen opened on a little veranda. By 7 in the morning, the street smelled of jollof rice and beans. Workers lined up, money in hand. They began to know her not as the barren woman Marcus threw out, but as the woman who makes the best food in the district. One customer even smiled and said, "Madam, you look different these days. There's a glow on your face." Leona smiled quietly. Maybe she was finally free, but nights were still hard. One evening, as she folded aprons, she asked Mira, "Do you think he ever loved me?" Mira's face turned serious. "I think he loved himself more. That's the only thing I'm sure of." Leona nodded slowly. "I just wish I hadn't wasted so many years." "You didn't waste them," Mira said firmly. "You grew stronger, and one day God will give you more than you lost." Leona didn't answer. But inside, a small flame began to flicker. A few weeks later, the flame grew. One Sunday afternoon, Mira returned from church with wide eyes. "Leona, guess what? I saw Marcus's cousin. He told me Marcus is preparing to marry again. A flashy girl from Lagos?" Leona paused, her hand stilled over the pot of soup. "Oh," she said quietly. Mira's voice rose. "And he's inviting some of your old friends. He wants everyone to see what a real wife looks like." Leona stirred the soup slowly. "He hasn't changed at all." Mira frowned. "He might even send you an invitation just to mock you." Leona wiped her hands on her apron. "Let him do whatever he wants. I know who I am now." But that night, as she lay awake, she placed one hand on her belly. Her other hand rested over her heart. She whispered into the darkness, "God, if you ever saw my tears, please show the world I was never the problem." And with that prayer, the story shifted again. Because sometimes before destiny crowns you, it lets the world strip you bare, so that when the crown comes, no one can deny it belongs. So here's the question I'll leave hanging. When life drags you through shame and you rise again, do you fight to prove everyone wrong? Or do you quietly live until truth speaks for you? The morning rush was already alive when Leona wiped down her small food stand. Children hurried to school. Taxi drivers honked. Women shouted prices from their stalls. The air carried the smell of jollof rice and fried plantains. She tied her scarf tighter and greeted her first customers with a weak but steady smile. Life was moving forward, one meal at a time. 2 plates, please, a man's voice said. Leona turned. A tall man in a crisp white shirt and neat brown trousers stood before her. He carried a black laptop bag, his eyes kind, his smile gentle. "Your food smells too good to pass," he added. Leona blinked, then asked quietly, "Spicy or mild?" "Spicy," he grinned. "I like my food to fight back." For the first time in weeks, Leona chuckled. He introduced himself as Emmanuel, a lawyer who worked at the firm down the road. He paid for his food, thanked her politely, and left. The next day, he returned, and the day after that. Sometimes he ordered 2 plates, sometimes just 1. Each time, he left behind a smile or a small joke. Never too long, never too much. Just enough to make Leona's day feel less heavy. One quiet afternoon, when no customers were waiting, Emmanuel leaned against the stand. "Madam Leona, do you ever rest? You've been here since morning." She wiped her hands on her apron. "I rest when I get home." He frowned. "You shouldn't work this hard alone."
"Do you have help?"
"No," she admitted, "but I'm used to it." He hesitated, then asked softly, "Are you married?" Her chest tightened. "I was," she whispered. Emmanuel nodded gently. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to open old wounds." Leona shook her head. "It's not your fault." He looked at her quietly, then said, "Just know you seem like someone with a good heart. Strong, too. I admire that." And with that, he walked away. That night, Mira teased her. "Who's that man always coming for food? The one with kind eyes?" Leona rolled her eyes. "He's just a customer." "Are you sure?" "Because he looks at you like you're the main dish." "Not the rice." Leona laughed despite herself. "Don't start." Mira. But Mira wasn't wrong. Over the next few weeks, Emmanuel brought more than money. He brought plantains, onions, bottled water, little gifts to support her business. He stayed longer, listening to her stories, telling her about his late wife who had died in a car accident years ago. "I haven't tried to love anyone since," he confessed one evening. "Until recently. You remind me of peace, not the loud kind, but the quiet one that feels like home." Leona froze. Her heart raced. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know," Emmanuel said softly, "but I'm not Marcus. I won't break your heart." It took months, months of coffee, of short walks, of Sunday dinners. But eventually, Leona's smile grew more natural. Her laughter sounded like it belonged to her again. And one evening, under a tree in the park, she looked at him and asked, "Why me?" "You could choose anyone," he smiled. "Because you are real. You carry pain, but you still stand. That's the kind of woman I want beside me." Leona's eyes filled with tears. She reached for his hand. "Then I want to try too." 6 months later, they married in a small ceremony. No chandeliers, no gold chairs, no photographers chasing hashtags. Just a few friends, a simple cake, and a peace Marcus's mansion had never known. And when Emmanuel leaned close that night and whispered, "I love you, my queen," Leona finally believed the words. So here's where we pause. If someone broke you, and someone else showed you what love truly is, would you risk trusting again? Or would you let the ghosts of the past decide your future? Leona's new life with Emmanuel felt like stepping into sunlight after years of rain. The man who once mocked her was gone from her world. Now there was a partner who listened, who laughed, who prayed with her before bed, and kissed her forehead each morning before leaving for work. For the first time in years, Leona felt safe, and then her body began to change. It started small. A wave of nausea every morning, the smell of stew turning her stomach, fatigue that left her sitting down more than standing. Maybe. "It's malaria," she told Emmanuel with a shrug. "But 2 weeks. passed. The sickness stayed. The fatigue grew. Let's go to the clinic, Emmanuel insisted. No arguments. They sat in a small waiting room, the air filled with the hum of an old ceiling fan. Leona bit her nails, her heart pounding. The nurse finally appeared with a paper in hand, smiling. Congratulations, madam. You are pregnant. Leona's eyes widened. Her hand flew to her mouth. Pregnant? Yes, the nurse nodded. About 3 weeks along. Leona broke into tears. Not tears of sorrow, but of joy so heavy it bent her shoulders. Emmanuel leapt to his feet. Pregnant? Are you serious? The nurse laughed. Very serious. He pulled Leona into his arms, his voice trembling. You're going to be a mother. We're going to be parents. Leona sobbed against his chest. After everything, God remembered me. The months that followed were filled with excitement and nervous prayers, but the real shock came at her first ultrasound. The doctor moved the probe across her belly, then paused. His brows rose. Madam, there are 3 heartbeats. Leona sat up. 3? Yes, he smiled. You're carrying triplets. Leona screamed so loud the entire clinic probably heard her. Emmanuel dropped to his knees, tears streaming. God, you've done too much. 3 children at once? This is more than we asked for. Preparations began immediately. Emmanuel painted a nursery. Mira bought tiny clothes in sets of 3. Neighbors donated toys and blankets. On a calm Saturday morning, Leona gave birth to 3 healthy boys. The nurses clapped, the doctor smiled, and Emmanuel couldn't stop laughing through his tears. They look like you, he whispered, holding one baby, but this one's ears. Those are definitely mine. Leona cradled all 3. Against her chest, I'm not barren, she whispered. God proved them wrong. Word spread quickly. The woman Marcus had thrown out now had triplets, and not just children, but a loving husband, a thriving home, and a reputation that glowed brighter than before. Some people smiled with joy, others whispered with regret, but Leona didn't care. Her arms were full, her heart fuller. Meanwhile, across town, Marcus's empire looked untouchable. His company cars were new, his suits were sharp, his bank account grew. But there was one thing money couldn't buy: a child. 3 years had passed since he divorced Leona. 3 different women, no pregnancies, one even left, saying she refused to live in a house where his mother treated her like a baby factory. Marcus's pride was cracking, but instead of facing the truth, he kept searching for another woman to blame, another distraction to silence the shame. And that brings us to the edge of the next storm. Because when a man builds his life on lies, one day truth will knock on his door, and sometimes it arrives dressed in gold, with 3 children at her side. So here's the question. If the very person you called barren walks into your world holding proof that you were the broken one all along, would you confess your fault, or would you fight harder to protect your pride? The whispers began before Marcus could control them, at weddings, in boardrooms, even in quiet corners of his own house. Did you hear? Leona has triplets, yes. The same woman he divorced. Maybe he was the problem all along. Marcus laughed it off in public. But inside, the words sliced like blades. He drowned them with new cars, louder parties, and expensive suits. But whispers have a way of echoing louder than applause. One evening, his closest friend Daniel leaned across the table at a restaurant. Bro, you can't keep ignoring this. People are talking. You need to face it. Marcus clenched his jaw. Face what? She tricked people. It's not possible. Daniel sighed. Marcus, denial won't give you peace. Maybe get tested. Find the truth. But Marcus slammed his glass down. I don't need a test. I know I'm fine. She was the problem. Daniel leaned back, shaking his head. Keep saying that, but the world already sees something different. Meanwhile, Leona's life bloomed like a garden after rain. Her food stand became a proper shop. Emmanuel expanded the business, helping her hire workers and buy equipment. Her days were full of laughter, baby giggles, and the hum of pots cooking on the stove. Every night, as she rocked her sons to sleep, she whispered, "You are my miracle." You are my proof. The same city that once pitied her now admired her strength. She no longer walked with her head down. She walked like a woman who had been through fire and came out carrying light. But pride is a stubborn disease. Marcus refused to admit defeat, so he searched for another distraction. That distraction came in the form of Vanessa, Cole, a socialite from Lagos with flawless gowns, golden nails, and a family name that turned heads. She was beautiful, confident, expensive in every way, and when she smiled at Marcus, his pride whispered, "This is your redemption." Within months, Marcus and Vanessa were seen everywhere together. Weddings, business launches, red carpets, Instagram feeds. Finally, Marcus has moved on, people said. Look at his new bride. A real queen. Marcus spoiled her with dresses, phones, even a car. But behind closed doors, Vanessa worried. She had been with Marcus for months. Still no pregnancy. Still no heir. Each negative test weighed heavier on her heart. And the question her mother asked rang in her ears. Are you sure the man isn't the one with the problem? 2 weeks before the wedding, Vanessa finally raised it. Marcus, do you ever think about seeing a doctor? His eyes narrowed. For what? A checkup. Just to be sure. The room froze. He stood slowly. So you think I'm the problem? No, she said quickly. I'm just saying maybe we both check together. His face hardened. You sound just like Leona. Don't bring this up again. Vanessa swallowed her fear. But in her chest, doubt began to bloom. Marcus, however, was more focused than ever. The wedding had to be perfect, bigger than any scandal, louder than any whisper. People. We'll talk about this wedding for years, he told his planner. I want Leona sitting in the front row, watching me win. The planner blinked. Your ex-wife? Yes, send her a first-class invite. I want her there. And just like that, the trap was set. A man planning to mock his ex, a woman quietly preparing her own entrance, and a city about to witness what happens when pride writes the script. But truth shows up to edit the ending. So here's the cliffhanger before we continue. If humiliation is the stage someone built for you, would you walk in broken, or would you walk in carrying fire? The morning of the wedding dawned with a sky too bright, too loud, as if the sun itself wanted to witness the spectacle. Marcus paced inside the hall, his white agbada pressed to perfection, gold embroidery shining under the chandeliers, every detail screamed of wealth and power, roses flown in from Ghana, golden chairs lined up like thrones, and a live band warming up near the stage. But beneath the glitter, Marcus's chest throbbed with unease. He kept checking his watch, his eyes darting toward the entrance. Daniel, his best man, noticed. Why are you restless? You're the groom. Today's your big day. Marcus's voice was low, sharp. I'm waiting for someone. Who? Daniel asked. Marcus didn't answer. He just straightened his cuffs and stared at the door. Meanwhile, across town, Leona stood in front of her mirror, her yellow gown, simple yet radiant, flowed around her like sunlight. Her hair was tied in a crown of curls, her eyes calm but fierce. Mira adjusted the scarf around her shoulders. Are you sure about this? You could tear that invitation and stay home. Leona looked at her 3 sons, dressed in matching bow ties and bright smiles. No, she said softly. I'm not going to fight. I'm going to be seen. Mira raised a brow. Seen? He wants to mock you, Leona smiled. Calm and steady. Then let him choke on the truth. Outside, a sleek black Rolls-Royce waited, its polished surface reflecting the morning sun. Back at the wedding hall, the guests arrived in waves of glitter and perfume. Politicians, business tycoons, socialites. Every seat filled with people eager to post about the event of the year. Vanessa, glowing in her designer gown, adjusted her veil in a hotel suite nearby. Her friends cheered. You look like a queen. Marcus will faint when he sees you. She forced a smile. But inside, unease gnawed at her. What if the whispers about Leona were true? What if... She shook her head. Not today. Today was her day. Then it happened. The hall doors opened. A black Rolls-Royce glided to a stop outside. Gasps rippled across the room. Phones shot into the air like fireworks. The back door opened slowly, and out stepped Leona. The yellow gown shimmered under the lights. Her steps were calm, deliberate. Regal, and beside her 3 small boys, their hands tucked firmly into hers. The hall froze. "Wait, is that his ex-wife?" Someone whispered. "She has children?" Another gasped. "Triplets!" Marcus's heart slammed against his ribs. He staggered forward, gripping Daniel's arm. "Tell me I'm dreaming." Daniel's eyes widened. "No, bro. She has children." Leona walked with quiet dignity, her sons matching her pace. Her gaze met Marcus's. Steady, unbroken. She smiled. Not the bitter smile of revenge, but the peaceful smile of a woman who had survived. She sat down gracefully in the front row, the very seat Marcus had reserved for her. Mockery. Her boys clambered onto her lap, whispering, "Mommy, we made it." She kissed their heads, her face glowing like sunrise, and just like that, the music dimmed, the chatter died, even. The band stopped tuning their instruments. The grand wedding had turned into a silent courtroom, and every eye was fixed on the one woman Marcus thought would come broken. So here's the razor-sharp question for you. When the truth walks into the room, calm and undeniable, what happens to the lies we've told? Do they collapse quietly, or do they explode for the whole world to see? The pastor cleared his throat at the altar. "Shall we begin?" But Marcus wasn't listening. His eyes were locked on Leona and the 3 boys seated beside her. The crowd's whispers grew louder, bouncing against the marble walls like waves in a storm. "Those boys, they look like her?" "No, they look like him. Either way, she has children. And not just 1, 3. Vanessa finally entered the hall, her veil trailing behind her. She noticed the silence, the stares, the way Marcus stood frozen instead of smiling. She reached the altar and hissed under her breath. "What's going on? Why is everyone staring?" Marcus's throat tightened. He swallowed hard. That's Leona." Vanessa's eyes darted toward the front row. Her chest tightened. "Your ex-wife?" Marcus nodded slowly. "And those children?" She pressed, her voice sharp. Marcus's lips moved, but no words came out. Vanessa's eyes widened under the veil. "You told me she was barren." Gasps shot through the hall as her voice rose. "You told me she couldn't give you children. That's why you left her." Marcus stammered. I thought she was." "That's what doctors?" She snapped. "You never showed me a single test. You never agreed to get checked yourself." The crowd erupted into murmurs. Phones angled higher. Every guest became a witness. Leona rose slowly from her seat. She picked up the youngest boy and faced the altar, her voice steady. "Yes, they are my sons." The hall fell silent again. Even the air seemed to stop moving. She looked straight at Marcus, her eyes calm but sharp. "You called me barren. You called me cursed. You threw me into the street and told the world I was worthless. But I was never the problem. God has given me not 1 child, but 3. Vanessa's face crumpled. "You lied to me. You dragged her name through the mud, and all this time it was you." Marcus tried to step closer. "Vanessa, please, let's talk after—" "No!" She cut him off, her voice echoing. "We will talk now, because the entire hall deserves to hear the truth." Her bouquet slipped from her hands, landing with a thud on the altar. "I can't marry you. Not today. Not ever." Gasps filled the air. The pastor stepped back. The choir sat in stunned silence. Vanessa turned sharply, her gown sweeping behind her as she stormed out of the hall. Her bridesmaids rushed after her, their heels clicking like a drumbeat of judgment. Marcus stood alone at the altar, his mouth dry, his pride shattered. He looked at the crowd, eyes wide, whispers piercing, cameras rolling. Every lie he had told had just been dismantled in front of hundreds. Daniel whispered urgently, "Say something, bro. Do something." But Marcus couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Meanwhile, Leona gathered her sons. She didn't gloat, She didn't shout. She simply stood, her dignity wrapping around her like a golden robe. She walked toward the exit, her boys gripping her hands. Her steps were calm, deliberate, like a queen leaving a courtroom after the verdict. Mira met her at the door, whispering through tears, "You showed them the truth." Leona shook her head. "I didn't come to prove anything. I came to be seen." She stepped into the Rolls-Royce, the door closing gently behind her. The car pulled away, leaving behind a hall full of chaos, silence, and a groom stripped bare. So here's the question to carry forward. When pride collapses in public, is it the shame that destroys a man, or the truth he refused to face long ago? The wedding hall that once roared with laughter now echoed with silence. Golden chandeliers still sparkled. The band still clutched their instruments. But the joy had drained out like water from a cracked pot. Marcus stood at the altar frozen, while guests whispered without fear of being overheard. "That man is barren." So it was his fault all along. Imagine, he wanted to disgrace her. But look who left disgraced. The words stabbed deeper than knives. For the first time in his life, Marcus wished the ground would open and swallow him whole. Hours later, the hall was empty. The roses drooped. The golden chairs sat abandoned. The untouched food grew cold. Marcus sat on the edge of the stage, his once proud agbada wrinkled, his crown of pride reduced to dust. Daniel, his best man, walked up quietly and removed his cap. She came with triplets. Bro, triplets. And the whole world saw it. Marcus rubbed his eyes, his voice cracking. "I planned this wedding for months. I invited her to sit there and watch me move on." Daniel shook his head slowly. "She didn't come broken. She came with proof. Proof that you were wrong." That night, social media exploded. Clips of Leona stepping out of the Rolls-Royce went viral. Photos of Vanessa dropping her bouquet trended. Worldwide, triplets at the wedding, Marcus exposed. Leona returns. Some comments were mocking, some were furious, others hailed Leona as a queen. Marcus scrolled through the posts with trembling fingers. Every headline screamed, the same verdict. He was the problem all along. Meanwhile, at home, Leona sat peacefully with her children. Mira read comments out loud, shaking her head. "Listen to this one. This woman is a lioness." She didn't shout, didn't fight. She just showed up with God's answer. Leona smiled gently while feeding one of the boys. "I didn't do it for applause. I just wanted him to see." Her voice carried no bitterness, only quiet strength. For her, the battle was over. She had already won, but Marcus couldn't let go. That very night, he appeared at Leona's doorstep. His once shining shoes were dusty, his shirt hung loose, his eyes were red, like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. Leona froze, placing her baby in the crib. "Marcus." He removed his cap and held it in both hands like a guilty schoolboy. "I didn't come to fight. I came to say something." Mira crossed her arms. "You shouldn't even be here." But Leona raised her hand gently. "Let him speak." Marcus's voice broke as he stepped forward. "I ruined everything. I judged you wrongly. I insulted you. I let pride blind me." Silence hung heavy. He took another step closer, tears spilling. "I told the world you were barren. I never tested myself. I just assumed. And that assumption destroyed us." Leona's eyes glistened, but her voice was steady. "You didn't just shame me, Marcus. You crushed me. You made me feel worthless." He fell to his knees. "I don't deserve forgiveness. But I had to come. Even if you never forgive me, I had to say it. I was wrong." The room was still, only the soft breathing of the children filling the air. Leona finally spoke. "Stand up." He looked up, startled. "You're not angry?" She shook her head slowly. "I was angry for years, but now I'm free." Marcus rose, wiping his face with the back of his hand. "Thank you for listening. I already went to the doctor this morning." He confirmed it. Leona tilted her head. "What did he say?" Marcus lowered his eyes, shame burning through him. Low sperm count. Possibly from an untreated infection years ago. It was me, all along. So here's the haunting question before we move forward. If the truth finally crushes your pride, is confession enough? Or is it already too late? Marcus's words hung heavy in the air. Low sperm count. Years of denial crashing into one cruel truth. Leona closed her eyes for a moment, steadying her breath. She thought of the nights she wept, begging God to make her womb fruitful, the names his mother hurled at her, the shame she carried alone. And now, the truth was standing in front of her, trembling, broken, confessing too late. Her voice was soft, but firm. You didn't only crush me, Marcus. You crushed yourself. You let your pride destroy the only love you ever had. Marcus lowered his head. I know, and I can't undo it, but I needed to say it to you. I was wrong. Leona studied him. The once arrogant man who strutted in gold watches and silk suits was gone. Here stood a shadow, stripped of power, begging for peace. I don't hate you, she said finally. I don't carry that weight anymore. God gave me a second chance, a husband who loves me, children who light up my world. I've moved on. Marcus swallowed hard, his lips trembling. Then, you forgive me? Leona nodded slowly. Yes, I forgive you. His shoulders sagged, relief flooding his face. Thank you. Even if nothing else, thank you. As he turned to leave, Mira whispered fiercely, You're stronger than I'll ever be. How could you forgive him after everything? Leona gave a small smile. I'm not strong. I just healed. Forgiveness isn't about him. It's about me, walking free. The next morning, Marcus woke to another storm. His company's investors had pulled out overnight. News blogs blasted headlines. The disgraced groom, even Vanessa posted a message online. Don't call me. Don't follow me. I've gone back to Lagos. Find peace within yourself. Marcus sat in his office, phone buzzing with unanswered calls. For the first time, wealth couldn't shield him. His empire was collapsing, brick by brick. That same afternoon, his mother walked into the office. Her face was older, wearier, her eyes clouded with guilt. Marcus, she whispered, sitting across from him. We were wrong. He looked up slowly. I know what you're going to say. Mama! Tears welled in her eyes. I pushed you to marry someone else. I called her names. I told you to throw her away. And all this time, it wasn't her. It was us. We destroyed something pure. Marcus dropped his gaze, his voice breaking. You helped me chase her out. His mother covered her face. And I will never forgive myself. For the first time in years, silence bound them together. Not pride, not gossip, just regret. Meanwhile, Leona's home was filled with laughter. Emmanuel returned from a business trip, sweeping her into a hug. I saw the clips online. You walked in like a lioness, Leona chuckled softly. It wasn't easy. I'm proud of you, he said, kissing her forehead. But more than that, I'm happy you stood up for yourself. She looked at her boys sprawled on the floor, chasing toy cars. They don't even understand what happened. But one day I'll tell them the story. The full story, Emmanuel smiled, and I'll be right beside you. 1 month passed, the viral headlines cooled, but Marcus remained a man undone. His once bustling office felt like a graveyard. Colleagues whispered behind his back. Neighbors no longer greeted him with respect. And every night, as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, he replayed it all. Leona's calm entrance, the triplets' innocent eyes, Vanessa dropping her bouquet. The truth he had fought to avoid had finally buried him alive. So here's the reflection as we step toward the final act, when forgiveness sets one person free but leaves another trapped in regret. Is that justice or just the price of pride? Morning light filtered through thin curtains. Painting the room in muted gold, Leona stirred first. The soft weight of her triplets nestled around her. For a moment, everything was still and the chaos of Marcus. The scandal, the viral headlines, all of it felt far away. But quiet never lasted long in her world. The knock came at 7 a.m. sharp. Emmanuel opened the door to find a courier holding a sealed envelope. Delivery for Mrs. Carter. Leona frowned, wiping sleep from her eyes as she broke the wax seal. Her gaze darted across the lines, her breath catching. It wasn't just a letter. It was a legal summons. Mira rushed over within the hour. What does it say? Leona handed her the papers, her voice low. He's contesting custody. Marcus, he wants the boys. Mira's mouth fell open. He abandoned you. He lied to you. And now, Leona cut her off with a trembling whisper. He says they're his legacy, that I robbed him of fatherhood. He wants joint custody. Mira slammed the table. Legacy? He hid his infertility for years. He watched you suffer, Leona. This isn't about fatherhood. This is about control. Leona buried her face in her hands. Why can't he just let me live in peace? By noon, Leona and Emmanuel sat across from their lawyer in a downtown office. The woman, sharp-eyed and calm, flipped through the summons. This is a strategic move. Marcus knows he can't win public sympathy anymore, but the courts, they're slower, less emotional. He's gambling on technicalities. Emmanuel clenched his jaw. Technicalities won't raise these boys. Love will. And Marcus has none to give. The lawyer nodded. I'll prepare to challenge this, but brace yourself. He has resources. He will drag this out, Leona whispered, almost to herself. I thought forgiving him was the end, but maybe it was only the beginning. That evening, Leona sat alone on the porch, watching her sons tumble across the grass. Their laughter rose like music, a sound too pure to be touched by bitterness. Yet her heart tightened. Would she have to sit in a courtroom, explaining why she deserved to keep her own children? The thought burned. Meanwhile, across town, Marcus poured himself another glass of whiskey. The papers were filed. His lawyer assured him he had a case. Redemption through fatherhood, the attorney had called it. But Marcus knew the truth. This wasn't about redemption, it was about possession. He stared at his reflection in the dark window. The man who once had. Everything now clung to fragments, a reputation in ruins, a mother drowning in regret, and children, not his by blood, but tied to his name in scandal. If he couldn't rebuild his empire, maybe he could at least rewrite his story. Back on the porch, Emmanuel joined Leona, slipping his hand into hers. You don't have to carry this alone, her voice cracked. I'm terrified. What if he wins? Emmanuel looked at her steadily. Then we fight harder. And if the fight breaks us, we rebuild, again and again. Because these boys are not trophies. They're our family. And no judge, no ex-husband, no scandal can erase that. Leona leaned against him, drawing strength from his certainty. For years, she had lived under Marcus's shadow. But now, as the stars began to prick the sky, she felt something shift. Fear was still there, but alongside it bloomed defiance. So here's the pivot. Just when forgiveness seemed to close the book, Marcus found a way to rip it open again. But the question that lingers is this. When justice collides with family, does the truth even matter? Or only the story a judge believes? The courthouse was nothing like the glittering wedding hall. No chandeliers, no red carpets, just plain walls. Wooden benches and the hum of ceiling fans that had seen better days. But for Leona, the weight in her chest felt heavier than any wedding crowd. This wasn't spectacle, this was survival. Marcus arrived in a tailored suit, mask of confidence fixed on his face. But his eyes betrayed him, darting, restless, hiding something. He shook hands with his lawyer, whispered instructions, then scanned the room. His gaze found Leona. She sat quietly with Emmanuel on one side, Mira on the other. Her sons kept home safe with a trusted nanny. Her yellow scarf wrapped gently around her shoulders, a symbol now of quiet defiance. For a second, Marcus almost faltered. But then he straightened, feeding on the whispers of spectators gathered to watch the fallen tycoon fight for dignity. The judge entered. All rise. Papers shuffled. Voices hushed. Marcus's lawyer rose first. Your Honor, my client seeks joint custody of his 3 sons. Though estranged from his ex-wife, he remains committed to being a father. We present this not as vengeance, but as a man's right to his bloodline. Leona's lawyer stood calmly. Your Honor, we intend to prove these children are not his by blood, and that this claim is not fatherhood, but control. We have medical evidence, we have testimony, and we have truth. The hearing stretched for hours. Marcus leaned on charisma, painting himself as a man wronged by fate. His lawyer cited photos, gossip columns, even Marcus's own wealth as proof of capacity to provide. But when Leona took the stand, the air shifted. She spoke slowly, clearly. He called me barren. He divorced me without ever testing himself. I carried shame that was never mine. And when God blessed me with children, he tried to turn them into trophies. Her voice trembled, but her eyes never left the judge. These boys know who their father is. Emmanuel has raised them from birth. Marcus has never fed them, never held them, never stayed up through the night when they cried. He doesn't seek family, he seeks ownership. The courtroom buzzed. Spectators leaned forward. Even the judge's brow tightened. Marcus's lawyer tried to object, but then Leona's attorney dropped the final blow. Medical records, Your Honor. This document confirms Marcus Grant has long struggled with infertility. The children cannot be his by biology. His claim is unfounded. A ripple of shock swept the room. Reporters scribbled furiously. Marcus's jaw clenched, sweat beading at his temples. For the first time, his polished mask cracked. At the recess, Marcus slumped into a hallway bench. Daniel approached quietly. "Why are you doing this, bro? You know they're not yours." Marcus stared at the floor. "If I can't have them, then what do I have left?" Daniel's voice was low, almost pitying. "Maybe that's the point. You lost them years ago, the day you lost her." Back inside, the judge's gavel finally struck. Custody claim denied. Case dismissed. Gasps. Cheers. Leona exhaled, her shoulders shaking with relief. Emmanuel pulled her close, whispering, "It's over." But she knew better. With Marcus, nothing was ever truly over. Outside the courthouse, microphones flashed. "Mrs. Carter, how do you feel? Do you forgive him even now?" Leona lifted her scarf, shielding her face from the frenzy. "I don't fight for revenge. I fight for peace. My children deserve nothing less." Her words rippled through the cameras, carried beyond the courthouse, beyond the city. So here's the crossroads. The law had spoken, the papers were signed, but Marcus's shadow lingered still, which begs the next question. When pride has lost the courtroom, will it finally surrender, or simply find another battlefield? For most people, losing in court would have been the end. A gavel strikes, a case closes. Life moves forward. But Marcus wasn't most people. Pride doesn't vanish when the law says no. It festers, it plots, it looks for another battlefield. 2 weeks after the custody ruling, Marcus sat alone in his office. The blinds were half closed, casting slashes of light across his face. His desk, once stacked with contracts, now sat bare except for a single envelope, the medical report that had outed his infertility. He picked it up, read the words again, low sperm count, low motility, then slammed it down. "This isn't the end," he muttered. "People won't remember the court. They'll remember the story I tell." And just like that, he decided his next war would not be in the courtroom, it would be in the press. Meanwhile, Leona was finally tasting peace. Her new restaurant bustled with life. The aroma of jollof rice drifting into the street, customers laughing at the tables, her triplets darting between the kitchen and the dining area. Emmanuel stood at the register, sleeves rolled up, joking with regulars. Mira wiped flour off her cheek, shaking her head. "Girl, you've turned this place into the heartbeat of the neighborhood." Leona smiled, tying her scarf tighter. "I just want a place where my children will never feel ashamed of where they come from." But even in joy, she sensed it. The quiet before another storm. The storm broke at midnight. A trending headline flashed across every phone screen in the city. Marcus Grant speaks. The truth about Leona and the triplets. The article painted him as a victim, a husband betrayed, a man mocked, a tycoon undone by lies. It implied the triplets might not even be Emmanuel's. It twisted every moment into a plea for sympathy. Mira nearly threw her phone across the room. "This man doesn't quit," He's trying to poison the world against you. Leona read the article silently, her hands trembling. She had forgiven Marcus once. She had survived his courtroom attack. But now, he was coming for her reputation again. The next morning, reporters swarmed outside the restaurant. Leona, did you hide the children's paternity? Is Emmanuel really the father? Why won't you answer Marcus's claims? Flashes exploded. Customers hesitated at the doorway. Her sons clutched her legs, frightened by the chaos. Emmanuel stepped in front of the cameras, his voice calm but firm. This is harassment. My wife owes no explanation. Our family speaks through love, not through gossip. But Leona could feel it. Marcus was winning the noise. That night, she gathered her closest circle, Emmanuel, Mira, her lawyer. We can't ignore this, she said quietly. Marcus is rewriting the story. If we don't speak, people will believe him. Her lawyer agreed. In the courtroom, truth is evidence. In the public, truth is narrative. You need to tell yours. Emmanuel nodded. Then we fight with light, not with mud. We don't tear him down. We lift the truth up. Leona took a deep breath. She had spent years silenced by shame, then years rebuilding in private. But maybe it was time to speak. Not for herself, for her children. So here's the shift. The battle had moved from marriage to courtroom, and now to the court of public opinion. But ask yourself this. When truth becomes a headline, can dignity survive the noise, or must it fight louder than the lies? Leona's team moved quickly. A week after Marcus's media assault, she sat in front of a ring light, camera lens blinking red. No crowd. No reporters shouting. Just her voice. Steady, vulnerable, unfiltered. She wore no heavy makeup. Only her yellow scarf draped across her shoulders. Her triplets sat in the background, stacking toy blocks, their laughter weaving into the silence. She began softly. For 7 years, I was told I was barren. For 7 years, I carried shame that was never mine. My husband, Marcus Grant, blamed me for our childlessness. He divorced me without a single test, without a single question of his own health. Her eyes held the lens, unblinking. I begged God. I begged doctors. And I begged a man who never once listened. But the truth is, I was never the problem. My children are living proof. The camera panned slightly to the boys. They looked up, giggling, waving at the unseen audience. Leona smiled gently, then continued. I don't speak today to destroy him. I speak to free myself and to remind anyone listening, silence protects no one. Lies only grow in shadows. The truth is not shameful. The truth heals. Within hours, her video spread like wildfire. Clips flooded TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. Leona Speaks trended globally. Users stitched her words with their own stories. Women abandoned, men falsely blamed, couples broken by pride. The internet crowned her not just a survivor, but a symbol, a voice for those who had been silenced. Marcus watched the clips in his penthouse, rage twisting his face. She's making me look like a monster, he growled. Daniel, seated across from him, shook his head. You don't need her help for that. You've done enough yourself. Marcus slammed his fist on the table. You think I'll let her win? You think I'll be remembered as the villain? Daniel's voice was low, firm. Maybe it's not about winning anymore. Maybe it's about facing what you are. But Marcus wasn't listening. Pride, once again, drowned out reason. Meanwhile, Leona's restaurant overflowed with customers. Strangers brought flowers. A local pastor dropped by, praying over her and the children. Even city officials issued statements praising her courage. Mira shook her head in disbelief. Girl, you've become a movement. Do you even see what you've started? Leona sighed, stirring a pot of stew. I didn't ask for a movement. I just wanted peace. Emmanuel kissed her cheek gently. And maybe that's why people believe you. Because you're not chasing fame. You're chasing truth. But peace, even now, felt fragile. Late one night, Leona stood on her balcony, scrolling through endless comments. Some were empowering, others cruel. accusing her of exploiting her children, of fabricating the story for sympathy. She closed her eyes, fighting back tears. God, did I do the right thing? Or did I just pour fuel on the fire? Emmanuel stepped beside her, wrapping an arm around her. The fire was already there. At least now it's burning in the open. She leaned against him, whispering, I just want this storm to end. But storms don't end on command. They either fade or they break everything in their path. And somewhere in his penthouse, Marcus poured another glass of whiskey, vowing quietly, if it's war she wants, it's war she'll get. So here's where the tension sharpens. Leona had turned truth into testimony, her voice amplified worldwide, but Marcus, cornered and desperate, wasn't ready to surrender, which raises the uneasy question, when pride refuses to die, does it consume only the guilty? Or everyone in its reach? The night was heavy with silence. Marcus sat alone in his penthouse office, the city skyline glowing behind him. On his desk lay two objects, a glass of half-finished whiskey and a crumpled letter with 3 brutal words scribbled across the top, paternity test results. His fingers trembled as he read them again. Low sperm count, reduced motility, medical confirmation of what he had denied for years. The truth was no longer rumor or accusation. It was science, and it stared at him like a mirror he could not smash. Downstairs, the world hadn't paused. Screens still glowed with Leona's testimony. Hashtags still trended. Strangers still dissected his sins. Marcus had spent years building an empire of wealth and power, but in 1 month, a single woman's truth had toppled it all. He slammed the report shut, stood, and paced. How dare she? How dare the world turn against me? He muttered, but as the words left his mouth, even he heard the hollowness in them, because deep down, Marcus knew he hadn't lost because of Leona's video. He had lost the moment he let pride blind him to love. Meanwhile, across town, Leona was preparing for a new day. Her restaurant buzzed with customers, the smell of jollof rice drifting out onto the street. Her triplets giggled as Emmanuel helped them with homework at the back table. And for the first time in years, Leona felt something simple, something priceless, peace. But Mira wasn't fooled by the calm. She leaned across the counter and whispered, You think Marcus will just disappear? Men like him don't vanish. They self-destruct. And sometimes they try to drag others down with them. Leona tightened her grip on the ladle. I'm not afraid anymore, she said quietly. He can rage all he wants. I won't live in his shadow. That evening, Marcus made his move, not through lawyers, not through the media, but through something darker. He called a meeting with his PR strategist and a few loyal allies. I want everything on her, he barked. Dig into her finances, her business permits, her past. If she has one flaw, one mistake, I want it on every headline by morning. One of the men hesitated. Sir, with all due respect, the public loves her. Attacking her now could backfire. Do it! Marcus roared, slamming his fist on the table. I will not be remembered as the man destroyed by a woman. The room fell silent. His allies nodded reluctantly. But their eyes betrayed a truth. Even they were losing faith. Back at Leona's home, the night was lighter. Her children had finally fallen asleep, their tiny snores filling the quiet. Emmanuel sat beside her on the couch, scrolling through his phone. People are calling you the voice of resilience, he said with a small smile. They don't see me as a victim anymore, do they? Leona whispered. No, Emmanuel said, kissing her hand. They see you as proof that dignity doesn't need to scream. It only needs to stand. Her heart swelled, but a shadow lingered. What if Marcus isn't finished? What if he tries something reckless? Emmanuel's voice was calm. Then let him try. We don't fight with mud. We fight with truth. And truth has already won. But truth doesn't always silence pride. And pride, when cornered, can be the most dangerous enemy of all. As Marcus stared out of his penthouse window, watching the city lights flicker below, he whispered to himself, If they think they've seen me fall, they're wrong. This story isn't finished. Not until I say it is. And so the tension sharpens one final time. Leona, at peace yet watchful. Marcus, broken yet defiant. The stage was set not just for an ending, but for a reckoning. The morning broke with headlines sharper than knives. Not about Marcus's empire, not about his wealth, but about his downfall. Former tycoon exposed. Fertility report confirms truth, Leona. Vindicated, triplets born. Against all odds, pride before the fall. Marcus. Grant's collapse. Screens. Across the city pulsed with the story. On talk shows, analysts debated how pride destroys leaders. In churches, pastors used his name as a cautionary tale. On TikTok, memes mocked him. Once untouchable, now unraveling. Marcus sat in his car, parked outside his own office building, staring at the headlines on his phone. Security guards at the gate whispered, some shaking their heads. He knew it. He felt it. Respect, once his crown, had crumbled into pity. Inside, investors were pulling out. Staff were resigning, and worse. Silence followed him everywhere. The silence of people who had already buried him in their minds. At Leona's restaurant, the scene was the opposite. Children laughed, customers lined up. Journalists hovered politely outside hoping for interviews. But Leona didn't bask in the glory. She simply stirred her pot of soup, fed her boys, and reminded them gently, fame is fleeting, but dignity stays. Emmanuel squeezed her hand. And you've given the world a masterclass in dignity. That evening, something unexpected happened. Marcus appeared at her door, not with cameras, not with lawyers, alone. His suit hung loose. His eyes were bloodshot, and in his hands, a folded piece of paper. When Leona opened the door, silence held them for a moment. Finally, Marcus spoke. I ruined everything. His voice cracked. I blamed you for years. I called you barren. I let pride destroy us. And now, he lifted the paper slightly. The doctors confirmed it. It was me. Always me. Leona studied him, calm, unshaken. I know, she said softly. The world knows now, too. Marcus's lips trembled. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I had to say it, out loud, to you. Her triplets peeked from behind her legs, curious. One of them waved. Hi, Uncle. Marcus's chest tightened. He looked away quickly, tears blurring his vision. I won't stay, he muttered. I just needed you to hear me. Leona's reply was simple. I forgave you long before you asked. Not for your sake and for mine. Anger was too heavy to carry. Marcus bowed his head, relief and shame mixing in his tears. Thank you, he whispered, before turning and walking away into the night. Weeks later, life found its rhythm again. Marcus faded from headlines, his empire reduced to fragments. Some said he left the city altogether, chasing redemption in quiet places. Others claimed he still wandered, pride and regret locked in battle inside him. But for Leona, the story had already ended. She had no need to follow his chapters anymore. Her restaurant grew, her boys thrived, her love with Emmanuel deepened. Not flashy, not loud, but steady as a heartbeat. One evening, as the family sat together under the warm glow of a single lamp, one of the triplets asked, Mommy, are you famous now? Leona laughed gently. No, darling. I'm not famous. I'm free, Emmanuel added softly. And freedom is better than fame. So what remains of the tale? A man destroyed by pride, a woman rebuilt by truth, and a lesson carved deep into both their lives. When lies are heavy, they crush, but when truth walks in, calm, steady, undeniable, it liberates. And as we close this story, let me leave you with one final thought. How many lives? How many loves have been lost? Not to betrayal, not to fate, but to simple pride? And how many could be saved if only we chose truth instead? If you've stayed with me till this very end, I thank you. If this story moved you, let it not just be entertainment. Let it be a mirror. And if you want more stories like this, stories of pain turned to power, of disgrace turned to redemption, don't forget to subscribe, share, and keep walking with us. Because the next story may not just inspire you, it may just change you.